Hey guys, I'm a huge believer in the fact that if you want career advice, you've got to talk to people who are young professionals, but with a little bit of experience. For me, that 30 to 40 years age bracket is the right age bracket to take career advice. This episode is called Why an MBA is Not Dead. We're going to cover different aspects of doing an MBA from a top Indian college, what the world of investment banking is like, which, by the way, is the top job out of most Indian MBA colleges, but also what happens in the process of transitioning from being an MBA, climbing up the corporate ladder, to getting into the world of entrepreneurship. This is Nikhil Aggarwal talking about MBAs and a lot more. If there were to be a practical modern day MBA, what would be the concepts covered? What would a great mentoring session be from a 35-year-old to a 25-year-old? That's the soul of this podcast. It was an extremely emotional, deep discussion. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy it as well. This is Nikhil Aggarwal, who's currently successfully running Grip Invest, but more on Grip Invest and the man's journey in this podcast. Make sure you follow TRS on Spotify. Every episode is available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world because we're a Spotify exclusive. And without further ado, enjoy this episode of The Ranveer Show. When I was growing up, Mama always told me, you gotta turn to the smart finance people. Nikhil Aggarwal, welcome to the Ranveer Show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Dude, I've learned a lot about money and making more money from you over the brief period that I've known you. But I feel like this particular podcast is going to be a gold mine of information for the audiences in terms of money making possibilities. So welcome and teach us, master.
Okay. I wish my team would think the same way, but yeah, I'll definitely do my best, and great to be here.
No, for sure. Dude, honestly, I kind of get bored sometimes in the media world and content world because the conversations are always the same.
Right.
And then I turn to my finance friends who are always talking about the next big money making.
You're the first person to call finance guys interesting.
And the
media guys
grass is green on the other side, man.
Fair enough.
No, I've begun to find finance guys interesting, honestly. When I've understood about money, I also feel generally the world of content is at that juncture where people now know the basics and they want to know like sort of the advanced, for lack of a better word, ways to make money.
Sure.
So, let's begin with that. What are the people in the world of finance thinking about making money now, which is different from, say, even pre-pandemic, which only finance guys know?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think a lot has changed actually. I think we're living in a fundamentally different world. The first thing that comes to my mind is, pre-pandemic, the expectation of an event like a pandemic used to be almost rarely modeled in, right? It used to be, okay, we can draw a 10-year model or a 15-year model, and there was no expectation of an event like a pandemic to be factored in. The biggest thing that has changed is across investments, people are saying this has to be factored in, right? We are likely to see, or we have to expect that we will see an event like a pandemic, which will significantly destroy all assumptions. Okay. So I think that is the number one change that has happened, whether you're investing in equities, whether you're spending fixed income, whether you're buying commodities, whether you're buying gold, right? Whatever it is. I think that's the number one thing that has changed. Second is that there used to be a philosophy that countries like the US will never have high inflation rates. Okay. Sorry to go super technical, but
No, sure.
The US has had almost for 40 years absolutely low inflation, okay, which determined their foreign exchange policy. It used to be called the new monetary policy, where the US could pump as much money and it didn't make a difference to inflation. The US is now seeing 40-year high inflation, almost 10% inflation, which is unheard of, which is impacting how all assets will get priced, because US monetary policy will now be determined by this new paradigm. Okay.
Why did they not see any inflation in 40 years?
Because lots of reasons, but the most important one was all assets were normally traded in the US dollar, right? So if you printed more money, it was still in the US dollar. And hence every country was ready to buy it. What has happened over a period of time is that things have changed, right? China has become more powerful, oil and gas prices have risen, US is if it is importing a certain amount of assets, it gets impacted by foreign exchange fluctuations. So, and at the same time, between 2008 financial crisis and subsequent crisis, the US has pumped so much money into the market that it started to finally impact their inflation rates. Okay. So these are definitely two big trends that have happened. I think the third one, very, very different, is the emergence of a very powerful retail investor, individual investor, right?
All over the world?
All over the world.
Which means Aam Janta, which has extra money and they're looking for personal finance, means to multiply their khud ka money.
I don't know if you remember that a year back there was a stock called GameStop, okay, which suddenly caught everyone's attention when it rocketed, okay, and people like Elon Musk tweeted about it. There were many funds who actually had a short position against GameStop, and they all lost money. GameStop's rise was predominantly driven by retail investors. Okay, the combination of retail investors having money, having the tools like Robinhood in the US, Zerodha in India, to make really transactions available at a cheap cost, and finally the power of social media to connect all these retail investors to behave almost like one, right? Where someone can say on Twitter or on Reddit, I'm doing this, and suddenly it gets caught up and people start tweeting. That information power is coming together along with money and technology to make the retail investor a very powerful force, right? So to me, these are three things that have changed pre and post pandemic. I mean, there are lots of others, but three things that have really changed in how investments are happening.
You know how young dudes in a particular industry know shit that probably old dudes in the industry don't? Do the old dudes in finance understand all this?
I would say that's. I would say yes. Okay. I think old dudes in finance are fairly. I think finance is a fairly is an industry where information flows fairly quickly, right? And I think people have perspective. When I speak to guys or to senior bankers, or when I speak to senior private equity officials, I think I get the same answer, and they see it. They may have their hands tied in terms of how they can act on it, because from the institution or from their the way they're set up, they may have not have the flexibility or nimble to be able to react to this. But I do think that there's an awareness that this is happening, and to the best possible, they're able to make moves. Obviously, new age companies, new age fintechs are taking the world by storm, right? And are really making a huge change in the way people interact with their finances.
Because retail investors are also the primary listeners of this podcast, what should young people keep in mind who have that little extra money and they're figuring the personal finance game, but they're also parallelly trying to get as deep into financial knowledge as is possible?
Yeah.
So what should the young 22, 25, 29-year-old know right now, according to you?
Well, I would say the first thing is that there are certain fundamentals which are always true, right? We live in a constantly changing world, and hence you may not know what is the right thing to do in finance in the next 2 or 3 years, but there's some things that will always be true in investing. The first one, which was one of the premise behind starting our current company Grip, was diversification. Okay, it is always going to be true to diversify your assets, right? Do not go and put money in a single asset class, whatever it may be, your choice. But do not go and put money all behind one asset class. Make sure you look at 2 or 3 asset classes which have a fundamentally different nature. If you're doing stocks, make sure you do something fixed income, non-related to the stock market. If you're doing gold, do something which is going to appreciate in a certain way, right? I think that's the number one thing that people should be thinking about. Second is invest what you can invest. Okay, a lot of people end up putting out more than they can do, and especially in very volatile investments. We've seen a crypto craze. Right? In cryptos, while you can probably see a very high returns, you can also see very high losses, and hence it's important for you to put out money in certain asset classes which you're ready to lose, okay, or ready to give away. There are definitely other investment classes like a bond or real estate, right, which tend to be more stable in nature, and there you can be, you can take the right levels of exposure on that asset. Third, I would say that there is a new age of investment platforms and avenues for investment that are coming up. They should definitely go out there and explore and understand, and then choose the right partner for themselves. They no longer need to be caught up by saying, "Mujhe to FD में पैसा डालना है बैंक में. I have to go and buy blue chip stocks." I think there is a whole other world which was never accessible today that is now coming into their domain at completely digital, low transaction sizes, smartly executed, a lot of diversity, and they should explore those.
Like what?
I'm a little biased,
Sure.
but I would definitely say
You're the money man, dude. Go for it.
I think I would definitely say that we're doing something interesting at Grip. I think that's one definitely a platform. I think there are other platforms which are doing US, for example, US listed stocks, and they should explore it. But if there is an interest to put money into fixed income instruments, I think there's something interesting we're doing at Grip. We started that business 2 years back. We've enabled close to 210 crores of investments from exactly such investors, giving them, I think, more than what we have built. I think we've given the power of information and decision making and diversity to a large group of people. Okay, you can start your investment journey at as low as 10,000. Right, you love a brand like Blue Tokai for your coffee, you can invest in an option along with Blue Tokai. You take Uber for rides, you can invest in an option which is associated with Uber, right? You love a brand like Fab Alley because lots of women in our country love wearing Fab Alley products. You can purchase, you can get associated with that brand. So I think we're giving a different kind of investing power to users, and that's definitely something that people should try.
No, I dated a girl in finance once, dude. And that was my big financial education in life.
Well, at least you got something out of that relationship. I hope that's not the only thing.
I got a lot out of that relationship, man.
Okay. That's a good thing.
No, that was a good relationship. I dated a girl in finance, and honestly, that's what taught me just generally a lot about money. And that's why I really started trusting people from the world of finance. Like my mom always told me when I was a kid that always have Sindhi friends around you. They'll teach you how to manage your money well. And my Sindhi friends always told me that, dude, the first lesson we are taught when it comes to personal finance is always have physical assets.
Yeah.
And that's a cultural thing, because if you actually go into the history of Sindhis, they had to migrate from Pakistan. So everything that they had in the 1930s and 40s, and they were a business community even then. So
That's
they were
true.
loaded even then.
Yeah.
But they couldn't take all the assets to India. So it kind of became a cultural thing where they started focusing on, I mean, I don't want to use the word hoarding, but investing in gold,
Yeah.
investing in real estate. So when I'm with my Sindhi friends, that's what they'll always nudge me towards, that have physical assets. And
Yeah.
I kind of feel that what you're creating is a modern day version of that in some ways.
Yeah. I think that's the intent, right? I think, the reason we chose the name Grip is because you're holding on to something, right? And this is exactly what you're mentioning comes from Sindhi community, right? To say that
Are you Sindhi?
I'm not Sindhi, but I can tell you every landlord I've had is Sindhi, like every landlord. And I have a lot of Sindhi friends, but I think that comes with it. Also, I started my career in the financial crisis, right? In 2008 financial crisis. So at the beginning of my career, I saw what it meant to, possibly lose financial wealth, right? What it meant, how difficult it was to get a job because
Did you lose money?
well, I was a very young 22-year-old in 2008, but I had started investing in stocks, and I lost a lot of money in my stocks. But I also remember how difficult it was to get a job out of campus because companies were not doing it, right? But you grew up you very early, you saw an environment where you could lose everything and literally overnight, right? And that's what happened in 2008. Some of the people in Grip that we work with who are now 25, 26 actually don't remember back to 2008, right? They don't remember what it meant to do that. Our parents' generation do, right? They have seen crashes, they have seen the 1990 crash and stuff. But I think in some ways it was a great learning experience to see that this could happen to your career.
So the obvious question to you is, dude, what's happening right now because of the whole Russia-Ukraine thing? And people do have this conjecture that, maybe China's going to kind of do a similar thing in Taiwan, which will just change shit up for the Indian Ocean. It will change shit up for India. Are you into geopolitics?
I would like to be more. I think it's very fascinating. I'm a big World War II buff, I think it's very interesting as a subject of study.
Yeah, dude. Like we've had lots of army folks on the show. That's their subject, right?
Yeah.
Geopolitics, other than actual military stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of them had said in the past that we think the world has moved away from hot war. And that's until the point where Putin invades Ukraine and does all this shit to Ukrainian cities.
Yeah.
When there's a war going on in the world, our generation is too young to remember 2008, honestly. And secondly, we're really, really young to even think of how the World War impacted the world. So what is the impact of wars and shit on financial market? Let's speak specifically about this scenario. Chalo.
If I could say it in one word, it's uncertainty, right?
Okay.
No one can predict how a war will play out, right? There are you can build a decision tree and say this may happen and then this may happen, but honestly, it's all probabilities, right? And no one knows the outcome. We don't know whether the US will take a retaliatory position against Russia. We don't know if Ukraine is going to sign a peace deal with Russia. We don't know, right?
And every day shit changes up.
Every day shit changes. And when that happens, people who are in the financial world trying to make projections about one thing having an impact on the other. And we live in an incredibly connected world, right? Everyone is dependent on someone else. In that situation, you just don't know. And when uncertainty happens, assets can get completely mispriced. Okay. So what we know for sure is that we're living in very uncertain times. Okay. And hence, it's better to take from your financial investments a safer position with respect to how you're deploying capital.
As in, go for more low risk, low return investments.
Absolutely.
Basically.
And ideally go for something which is not necessarily linked to the stock markets, because the stock markets in such times can be very, very volatile. There's historically a preference for going for fixed income instruments, which say, okay, you will get X amount of return in a month, irrespective of how the stock market performs, right? So that is typically what science would suggest, or
which traditionally is silver, gold. What else?
Those are great because they tend to be safer instruments, right? So say gold, silver, even buying US treasuries is typically this thing. But even if you go for a AAA graded corporate bond, okay, like for example, HDFC's bank corporate bond, right? They're fixed income instruments. However the stock market performs, there's very little correlation to these stocks or these assets, and that's another opportunity for people to consider.
Cool. Let's go back into your story a little
Sure.
bit, man. Let's get away from like world wars and 2022.
Yeah.
You were an investment banker, and back in college when I didn't know what the I wanted to do with my career, if someone asked me what I wanted to do, I used to say that, I want to become an investment banker without really understanding what it was. And then I had an internship at EY in my final year of college where I was working in M&A. And that's what I kind of understood what investment bankers did, but not exactly, because I also figured that investment bankers in different firms do different jobs. So explain that. Like when someone says I'm an investment banker, I all like snorting coke and like I all like calling people and going woo when you'll close a deal.
Part of me wishes that was true. But before I answer your question, I think if you ask a graduate today what they want to do, I think the answer is they want to be a YouTube influencer.
Oh shit, that's honestly true.
I think that's now what's happening.
You know why though?
Why?
It's like a platform to get into another career. Ya to you get into acting, ya to you get into like business, and I think audiences are smart enough to know that by this point.
That's
anyway,
true.
go on.
Yeah. So an investment banker, very simply, is if I was to I'll answer the question on the life. I think that's more interesting. But very simply, an investment banker helps companies raise money or advises them on M&A transactions, right? And it's
what is M&A? Just explain that.
M&A is a merger and acquisition. Maybe I put it in a different way, right? For any story to be told, there needs to be a storyteller. Okay, you're a great storyteller, but there is a story that needs to be unfolded, that unfolds on this set here. An investment banker unfolds the story for companies who are looking to raise money, right? There's a way of telling that story that makes that story more attractive or brings out the right aspects of it.
Is it like doing sales for that company in boardrooms?
It is. Okay. And then after you sell after you communicate the story, there's also a certain execution process that needs to happen to bring the story to an end, right? To make two people meet. And that's what an investment banker's job is. If I was to explain it very simply, I unfortunately joined banking. It was very boring. I started my career in 2010 in banking and worked for an absolutely fantastic firm, right? As blue chip as it gets. I think I just I cannot replace that experience with anything else at Morgan Stanley. And
Morgan Stanley is probably the dream job for a lot of MBA grads in this country, right?
I definitely think so. And I can tell you that it's also the right culture, right? It's the place where the professional, the team is there, really will nurture you to be a better professional. So I couldn't have started my career at a better place than Morgan Stanley.
What's the rush of that career?
The rush of that career, maybe I can just give some examples from my what gave me a real kick, right? I think I was about 2 years into my role, and I was sitting in a room with Sachin Bansal, Binny Bansal, and listening to them explain us how they're building Flipkart, right? And getting to hear, like as a 24-year-old, getting to hear from the guys who are creating India internet, right? India e-commerce, on what their journey has been. There cannot be a bigger rush for a fresh MBA to have that kind of opportunity, right?
God.
Or to be in a room with Deep Kalra, who's the Make My Trip founder, just coming out of a US IPO, and telling about his journey at building Make My Trip. I would think genuinely that most people who stick around in banking stick around for the learning. Okay.
Intellectual stimulation.
For the intellectual stimulation, because you see, money at some point of time serves its purpose, right? I think money is really important, okay, but at some point of time money serves its purpose. It's not, and you will never, I think very few people can be slaves of money. All right, money can't keep you in office for 120 hours a week.
This is coming from a finance guy.
Yeah, this is coming from a finance guy who's gone through all sides of it, right? And I've also seen the other side of it as being an entrepreneur and having zero salary, right? So I can tell you that in both situations I was working 120 hours a week, all right, and it was never the money, right? The money could have been like the hook. You saw a girl and she was really good looking, and that's how you began the relationship. But that's not why you stayed in the relationship, right? That's not why you were happy. You were happy because of something else. Yeah. I think that's the same story for banking.
So here's what I want to know. We just did a podcast with someone called Pratham Mittal of Masters Union, and the thumbnail of the podcast said, "Why MBA is dead." And that was my version of hook to bring people into the podcast. Obviously, the podcast was about many other topics, future of education, bringing Neuralink into education, things like that. Now, people took that as a diss on MBAs. I'm not dissing MBAs. I'm actually here to learn from you. You did an MBA in finance. And jitna I have understood about Indian MBAs, the top one is MBA in finance, obviously. I'm assuming because the pay packages are the highest.
I think it's a fair assumption, but I think things are really changed as I can understand them. A lot of people are now choosing not to do MBAs. Okay, especially if you're an engineer, you're earning, you have an opportunity to make far better money. If you just talk about pure money, far better money as a pure engineer getting into a development or a product management role. But yes, outside of that, as an MBA finance definitely is a great pay package. I would say don't do an MBA for the technical skills. All right. I think the MBA is a phenomenal ground to learn how to be a better professional. It teaches you a tremendous amount of soft skills. Okay? It's like preparing you for dealing in a professional environment and for succeeding in a professional environment, right? How do you interact with people? How can you be better at communication? How can you be better at prioritization, planning, right? All of these things, which I believe are far more critical for a role than any technical knowledge that you can get.
So who should do an MBA right now? In the modern day scenario?
Actually, I think everyone should do an MBA. Okay. Because all of us have to be in a professional world, right? If you you're in a professional setting as well. You're running a outfit, a media outfit. You're interacting with people, and even for you, I believe an MBA will help you enhance what you're doing. Okay, so MBA is irrespective of what skill sets you want to do. I genuinely believe that an MBA program is a great program for anyone in the professional world. Okay, it doesn't have to be focused on finance. It doesn't have to be focused on marketing. I think a general MBA is a great professional tool.
we were talking about your relationship outside, and I
Yeah.
found it really fascinating. Can I talk a
Please,
little?
please, yeah.
Okay. So basically, you married someone who you once dated in college. You lost touch. You
Yeah.
had your own trajectories, and then you all met again in life and got married.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about your startup, you had a smile on your face. But when I spoke to you about your wife, your eyes lit up.
I hope she's listening to this.
And that's what's in your heart.
Yeah.
Whatever, man. Like, even though you're a finance guy, I just want to say the money.
Yeah.
What's money worth if there's not a source of happiness like that
No,
in your life?
absolutely.
It's also coming from a place of being single, my man.
I hope that changes soon enough.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
My point is that you spoke about your current relationship, and you've had your own like ups and downs as a man. Purely as a man, you've had. Can I talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've been divorced as well.
Yeah.
I know that when you said heartbreak right now, there was a part of you that went back to that timeline in your
Sure.
past. Let's talk about this. Men on the internet don't speak about like vulnerable shit, dude.
Yeah.
Or even in bro groups, we're always around and hitting
It's
each other.
always
in the
like good
nuts.
things, right? It's
Yeah.
we always talk about good things and good times.
Or strategy and how to make money.
Yeah, or strategy how to make money, or do the next big thing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why guys love sports.
That is true. In fact, if I don't know how frequently you use LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is my predominant social. I don't know if you call it a messaging platform. There is almost never negative news on LinkedIn, right? It's always I'm excited to be, I'm honored to be, I'm like I'm celebrating this. But that cannot be the case, right? Life always has both sides to it. Yesterday, after a very long time, I saw a post from a founder who said, I'm shutting down my company, right? And he wrote about that experience. And I really appreciate that he did that.
Yeah.
But we actually see all around us only as if the world is a great place, right? I think that's must be a little very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Like, it almost feels like if things are not going right in your life, you're the only person dealing with shit.
Yeah. That's the big curse of the social media generation, that you're only exposed to the positives of people. So you think that if there's a small negative in your life, that only your life is but that's not true, dude.
That's not true.
Everyone's having to deal with their own shit. But man to man, honestly, maybe this is like a younger brother in me asking you this, but dude, like what does something like divorce feel like in the trajectory as a man? Because here you're flying in your own career, best finance job, you're enjoying what you do. And often in college, we think that that's the real goal of life. Let me fly in my career. Let me be like the Sachin Tendulkar of this shit. And sometimes you do become the Sachin Tendulkar of that shit. But on the side, things are like breaking down.
Yeah.
So like, what was that whole experience like, dude?
Very difficult. Obviously, I mean, I think that's maybe a understatement to say, because it's not just the event, right? It's actually what leads up to the event, which keeps going on. And if it's someone that you've obviously loved and you've had a great relationship with, and then things are not great anymore, I think it can be incredibly hard. And at the same time, when you are balancing other things in your life, there will always be pressure on both sides, right? And most people go through this hopefully only once in their life at max. We're never prepared for the situation, right? Then MBA doesn't teach you this.
If you could gauge back to the younger version of yourself, like the late 20s guy, his mindset, what would you have changed to just have things pan out differently? For example, for me, when I look back at failed relationships, earlier I used to just blame the girl that it's her fault, this, that. Eventually, as I grew up, I realized, no, that's not true. Obviously, it's not true.
Yeah,
It takes two hands to clap, etc., etc. When you go a little bit deeper into that, obviously, it's not true. What's your end of the bargain? Because you always think you're the good boyfriend. Many Indian guys are like that. We're taught to be loyal. We've also grown up seeing Shah Rukh Khan movies, dude. We visualize ourselves as Shah Rukh Khan when girls visualize that they want a Shah Rukh Khan.
That's right.
So we have good intent, but somewhere as Indian guys, we don't have a good EQ. That's what I feel. Like,
I completely agree.
Like a lot of Indian girls, especially, and this is just my experience, and I might be wrong, and correct me if you have had a different experience. Many Indian girls, sometimes you have to guess what they want from you in relationships. And that's why Indian guys f*** up.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Like 100%. Absolutely. That's my experience as well.
Yeah, and I've had breakups because of that, dude. Like a girl just goes away, and I'm like, "What happened?" And she's like, "No, you didn't pick up the cues." And
Yeah.
I'm like, "I didn't know."
No,
that
and then if you pick up the cues, if they tell you, then but I told you to do this, so it no longer counts.
Yes,
right.
yes.
And then you're double screwed. So yeah, I think that's the story through.
Dude,
throughout.
I have become a master at like reading girls, in terms of who I'm dating.
Maybe that's the next episode
Those are
where
all-
you interview yourself and talk about the how to date girls.
that's all my past episodes. I've went through whole content tangent there. Out of all the mistakes I made in my own relationships. No, but for real, what was your gauge of what you could have done differently, man? And I'm also asking the finance professional in you because there's this movie called American Sniper I saw. It's got Bradley Cooper.
That's right.
And the movie's about war and this top quality sniper rifle soldier, like a guy who handles a sniper rifle. Sniper.
Yeah.
But the actual messaging of the movie is that every man, because we don't know how to deal with our own emotions, we look at our professional life and our personal life in two very different lights. Even Tamasha talks about this in some ways. The Ranveer Kapoor movie. Guys are up creatures in their own way, dude. I'm sure we have it easier than women in many ways, but there are some things very up about being a guy, which we don't speak about. And that's why you see that they say that 3/4 of all suicides are committed by men. There must be some reason for that, dude.
Yeah.
We don't understand our own minds.
Yeah.
So what was that for you, like when you gauge back?
Lots of things, for sure. I'm just trying to maybe pick a couple of ones that I think one is the first one that comes to mind actually is that in that situation, I think I went deeper into work. Okay. And I started investing more time actually working, which was exactly the opposite of what is healthy.
Like that was your response to
That was
trouble.
my response to that situation, right? To say, okay, I'm just going to, because I don't know how to deal with this, I know how to do my work. Okay, so let me just do more work. Okay, because it felt easier, it felt familiar to handle with, and hence that's what one of the things that I think I did, and definitely a mistake, right? I think what you need to actually do is to take the personal life that's not going well heads on, and you need to solve for it. And I think that's been one of my biggest learnings in the relationship now, to say you can't ignore what's happening in your personal life and just go into comfort zone, right? Whether it is, you'll disappear to have a drink with your friends, or you'll just go and watch a movie. You can't wish it away, right? It keeps building up and you need to solve for it. I think so. That to me was I wish I could go back and do that. The outcome may still have been the same, right? But at least I would have dealt with it the right way.
Well, this is useful fucking advice, man. Like this is honestly, when we speak about life MBAs, young people need to know this shit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, go through it yourself and then whatever. Don't learn from.
The funny thing is that, and you'll see many entrepreneurs also do the same mistake. I think sometimes you just need to go through it yourself, right? I hope no one does, but I think some life lessons cannot be taught.
What's the good that your divorce did for you?
I think it helped me discover a little bit more about myself. Emotionally, for sure. But also just be able to, I got married when I was fairly young, and you don't know, but you don't realize it, but you don't know much about yourself, right? About men having low EQ, it's because we predominantly spend time with our parents, and then a lot of us don't necessarily go to hostel, right? It's rare, and then we get married. Okay, so the ability to spend time alone and really discover yourself in a situation which you are uncomfortable with is where true discovery happens. Okay, so for me, I was for the first time really outside my comfort zone. Okay, in a place where not everyone could relate to.
How do you actually pull yourself out of that, dude? And wo bhi, what I honestly feel is when you're in your mid-20s, your late 20s, you have a certain amount of fire that can help you kind of launch out of any situation.
That's
but
true.
I'm curious about the 30s because I'm going to turn 29 this year, dude. And I've seen that gradual drop in energy from 22 to 29. It's very gradual. It's almost not noticeable, but it's there.
It is totally there.
So
yeah, I know you work out, and when I was 20, I used to, you don't sleep for a few days. It's okay. You've had a little bit too much to drink. It's okay. You go to the gym for 2 days and you're sorted, right? It no longer happens in 30s, right? I'm like, oh shit, I need to put in much more work. I need to be much more conscious. So it definitely happens. I was listening to your this video done before you met Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I know I heard about how you came out of that phase of your life. I think for me it was about discovering certain people around me, right, who really helped me get through it. One of them obviously is my wife, and I think that really helped me. I was obviously also going through a journey professionally with building a company, and having that as a area where I could spend more energy, very productively into building something was another huge enabler.
You channelized all of it, all the emotion into like the business.
That's right. Channelize a lot of that energy into that business. A business is like a child, right? It requires so much nurturing, and if you can give it, it can take a lot. It can absorb a lot of your time and energy, but it can also give back a lot of very important life lessons. And I was at very early stages of building that business, and I think that served a huge purpose in my personal life.
I have respect for you, bro. Honestly, like to bounce back from something like this, you hear a lot of people kind of playing victim and just staying where they are.
Sure.
Fact that you built out multiple companies after that, it's honestly inspirational, man.
Thanks,
and we're like in a generation where a lot of people think that 29 is too late to do shit. Which is such a wrong narrative to
totally
have.
wrong.
Dude. It's another rude question for you, but I'm just trying to dive a little deeper because there are life lessons here, man.
Sure.
You feel you're healed completely now? Because I'm sure you're over the breakup, etc., etc. But sometimes trauma is one of those things that just stays in men's heads.
Yeah.
So while you've seen professional success, do you think you're completely healed?
I would say so, actually. And maybe, to your previous question, the last thing to add is I actually did a lot of therapy, a lot of professional therapy to deal with that phase of my life. Because once again, it's not a simple event. Right? There are so many complications and linkages, family linkages, and how you react to it and how the other person reacts to it. And those need professional guidance to go through. I took counseling for many years to help me deal with that phase of my life, and that really made things. And I feel I've healed. Right. Once again, this is one thing that people don't talk about. Right. Where do we talk about having to go to a counselor? But I strongly recommend it to a lot of my colleagues. We have a coach in the company that helps us deal with certain situations because we're dealing with a high stress environment, and I think that's really important for people who go through it. Otherwise, we live with that burden.
What's therapy like, dude? Like, I've gone through it. Just what was your experience?
So I'd actually tried different types of therapies. Maybe not to go into the form of therapy, but I think that the therapy is, if I were to simplify it, it's a way of asking and answering certain questions for yourself. No one can answer them for you, right? But it's a way of, whatever the technique is, it's a way of sort of getting those question answers and achieving a level of clarity which you can't unless you're in that environment.
Let's call a spade a spade. You're a rich man now. I want to ask you how you built the riches.
Sure. Well, rich is a relative term. I would like to say I'm an ambitious man. Okay, and definitely would like to.
If we're in the top 0.1% of India, I think we're rich in this country.
We are very fortunate. We are more fortunate than we can expect to be.
The question's from the perspective of a truly middle class or lower middle class kid who's not comfortable with the phone he's holding or she's holding in his or her hand.
Yeah.
How do you become rich in this country?
Yeah. Well, the good news is that it is possible. Okay, and it is more possible today than it was ever before. Okay. Today, you can build a career and make money in ways that make you happy. Okay. In our parents' generation, there were probably only two options. You could either be a doctor or could be an engineer, and there was no other way to make a career, right, or make rich. In my generation, and I consider you as another generation altogether, but in my generation, that options expanded, and in today's generation, that options have really expanded. I again go back to certain basics which are probably, in my view, true for everyone. Right? Put in the hard work. Okay? At some point of time in your life, okay? Whether it's college, whether it's school, whether it's post college, at some point of time, put in the hard work. Right? You don't have to put in the hard work throughout. If you do, great, no problem. But put in the hard work. Number two is be true to yourself. Okay, be honest with the kind of work you're doing, with what you want to do, with your strengths and your weaknesses. Because if you're not, you're going to go down the path that's not going to work out. And I think third is to have a very high level of integrity towards the work you're doing. Because if you have that, you'll always stay on the right path. It may not go as fast as you want, but it'll get you there ultimately. These are three true principles for everyone. You don't have to necessarily do an MBA. You don't necessarily have to become a doctor. I think there are enough ways to get rich today and be successful and yet be happy for it in the world.
Yeah. I think, again, you're part of the startup ecosystem now. I know enough entrepreneurs in this country now to know the fact that there are incredibly rewarding and incredibly fun jobs out there for Indian youth. There's a lot of Indian youth that cries about their jobs, that I hate my job, I'm not earning well, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. Well, look at the startup ecosystem. We are constantly looking out for talent. Figure out how to get yourself hired, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's the big messaging. But specifically, again, from a finance perspective, one more rude question to you, Mr. Aggarwal, but where's your money? Like, what's your personal finance game?
Okay. So like I said, the first thing, you have to diversify, right? So I have followed that principle and diversified quite a bit. And between my wife and I, we've diversified quite a bit of our portfolio. My wife also works in my wife's also in venture capital, so her fortunes are also linked to the startup universe. A lot of our money is in fixed deposits, okay, or in fixed income. The reason for that is that our careers are very high risk, right? And our incomes can fluctuate, and hence our money needs to be in this. So one of the principles of diversification is to balance things out, right? So a large part of our portfolio is in debt mutual funds or in bonds, which are very fixed, have a high security cover and are this. Part of our portfolio is in stock markets, increasingly so given that the stock markets are reducing in price. Part of our portfolio is in investing in other startups. We have the fortune to be able to access that and invest in them. And then a large part of my portfolio is also on investments in Grip, right? As a rule, in fact, in the company, we invest in every single transaction that we list on Grip, right? And I personally invest in every single transaction that we put in the portfolio, because our rule of thumb is that if we are not going to put our money in it, I can't see anyone else putting the money in it, right? So we have a sizable chunk of our investments also on investment in Grip.
Just generally learned a lot from you on this episode, dude. I'm very excited about everything you guys are doing at Grip. I think that what you said about retail investors being at that right point in time, I think that's key. Because again, man, even like 5-6 years ago when I was 22, people my age didn't know anything about personal finance, dude.
Yeah.
There wasn't that much content available for Indian students, Indian professionals. We're living in a different world. COVID, the Ankur Varikus of the world, the Raj Shamanis of the world, the Rachna Ranares of the world, the BeerBiceps of the world have done a lot to like just tell the country that, listen, you need to take better care of your money.
As you said, a lot is happening.
I'm not talking just about crypto. I think often people, at least my age, a lot of people associate fintech with the zero.
Maybe a question for you.
Sure.
What's so exciting about crypto
To
to you as a person?
me or the generation?
Are you excited about crypto as an investment?
Because I've done my engineering, I'm excited about Ethereum.
But you're excited about the technology.
Yes.
Forget the technology. Right? I'm talking about the excitement about crypto as an asset class to buy and to trade. What's so exciting?
It begins with my idols talking about it in terms of Gary Vaynerchuk, who I trust blindly, who I see that he's validated his own career by creating material success for himself. It begins with that. The engineering mind then dives deep into why is Ethereum even a thing. Parallelly, it makes me think of why is Bitcoin a thing. Ethereum actually has some value.
That's true.
Like, you're familiar with the whole...
Yep.
But it made me question that why does Bitcoin have value. And what I realize is it's got enough people who point at Bitcoin and say that, okay, this is valuable. And when you actually study the nature of money or gold or diamonds or platinum, it's basically the same concept that people saw this yellow shiny metal and said, this is going to be worth something.
Right.
So that's what's happened with Bitcoin. With Ethereum, there is engineering use cases.
I agree with that.
Therefore, it's exciting. Same with Polygon, Sandeep Nelwal,
Yeah.
these guys. And I feel that generally, because of what's happening in the Web3 ecosystem, we are going towards a metaverse. I feel there is a lot of hype, for sure. There's a lot of hype. But I've constantly tried viewing it as a neutral. And I feel that, neutrally speaking, it is a positive kind of swing. In saying that, if you're purely talking about making money, there are already some tried and tested fantastic methods in the world of finance that aren't being spoken about enough. And therefore, I notice a lot of finance professionals being pissed off about the hype around crypto because they see numbers and they see money making techniques. And they say that, listen, you can make much more money in private equity. You can make much more money in the stock market. Why are you looking at that? I just feel it's a cultural thing, man. This generation is hyped about that because of the Gary V's of the world and the Tanmais of the world, etc. But people are learning about the tried and tested methods also. It's that whole angle about how once T20s came in, everyone thought Test cricket will die, but Test cricket is still there and it's still popular.
That's an interesting comparison. I think the technology behind it is phenomenal. In fact, we are exploring how we can use blockchain as a way of executing contracts on grip, right? And making it smarter, making it easier for people. At the same time, we're trying to see if the RBI brings in the digital rupee, is that a great way for people to make investments? So I think the technology is phenomenal. I think there is more to be discovered about some of the coins that are there, and I wish people would apply a little bit more filter into making some of those bets just for their own sake.
Do you own any crypto?
I don't. I don't own any crypto. But I understand the use cases for things like Ethereum, but I don't own any crypto because trading in crypto is not something that I have bought into yet.
Sure. No, you're fine. But okay, let's speak about your finance experience and why that has led you to not believing in crypto.
Sure.
Curiosity.
Yeah. I think more, not just my finance experience, but just overall experience, right? Like you said that. So what is the science behind? What is the science or the engineering behind it? What is the value being coming out of, right? People said that crypto is going to be a hedge to the volatility. Okay, it's going to be a hedge to the to events like the war. It's going to be stable. It can be a currency. Okay,
that's in theory. You're saying that's the hypothesis.
That is the hypothesis of crypto. Okay, this is why crypto was started.
Sure.
What we have seen now is that crypto or coins are not stable pricing, right? We have seen that they actually have a great correlation to the stock market. They're not uncorrelated to the stock market. And if it is truly a currency, it cannot move that way. It cannot have that kind of variation, right? So what you're then trying to see, and it's also supposed to be incredibly decentralized, when in reality, the holding of most crypto is incredibly concentrated in the hands of few.
In Silicon Valley?
In Silicon Valley for sure, but also among other pockets of really, miners or people who have incredible amount of money and are really vested in this asset class, which means that for a lot of purposes, you are not achieving the true tenets behind which crypto was thought to be an answer. If that is not the case, then it is simply what a group of people believe is the value of this asset class. Diamonds still have a real world utility. Gold still has a real world utility. Bitcoins and other coins, or most of the coins, don't have a real world utility. Okay, there are certain use cases and certain types of coins which do, and I think those are great. Right? I've heard some absolutely fantastic applications of what crypto and blockchain can do, and it's mind-boggling. Right? For a country like India, what can be enabled?
Like for example.
The most recent one I heard was that farmers used to go to mandis, right? And they used to give their produce. Now, they used to get a contract to say, you've given your produce, paper contract, but they needed money. So they used to go to the bank and bank this contract, okay? That I have provided my 100 quintals of wheat to this guy. The bank would say, I'm not really sure. Is this contract real? Okay. So now, that contract can be issued on blockchain, right? With a unique stamp, and they can go to the bank and it can be so easily verified. No chances, right? Now that is fantastic because this for a country like India is an incredible use case. Okay. And I'm a total believer in that. Okay. There are certain use cases which I think are not really required, right? Money is already decentralized to a very large extent. You don't need to find another way to decentralize money. So that is why I'm unable, or I'm not a big believer in crypto as an asset class. Blockchain, yes, not crypto.
What about Ethereum?
I think the Ethereum use case is great, but from a holding trading perspective, that hasn't got at least me excited to do it. We'd love to find use cases for it in our business, and I would love to see that expand. But as an asset class to hold and to trade, etc., that's not particularly my risk appetite.
I think when people buy the Ethereum token, they're basically betting on the possibilities of that Ethereum network and what can be built, like what blockchain technologies can be built using the Ethereum protocols.
Yeah.
So you're sort of betting on
The sector.
Basically.
Yeah.
So that's I think the story about Ethereum, and then Polygon is supposed to be a layer built on top of Ethereum. It's the same logic.
Yeah.
That you're betting on the possibilities there.
Yeah.
You're betting on the whole new Web3 ecosystem. In saying that, even I'm not that much of a Web3 expert to understand the exact future of what's happening. And I turn to people like yourself. Because I feel that as with politics or geopolitics or news or crypto, you try learning it from all sides of the spectrum.
I agree, and I would be very far from knowledgeable on the subject. I'm trying to get smarter myself on, and these are some of these concepts are out there, right? Metaverse is really out there. I don't know if you've seen Ready Player One, but Steven Spielberg, right? For him to, he literally imagined the metaverse so many years back, and I think maybe we're going off topic, but the metaverse, in my view, and Ready Player One captures this, is a reality that happens when society starts functioning in a different way, right? For you to spend significant amount of time away from physical conversations like this in a pure virtual environment, something has got to fundamentally break in our society. Okay, even in Ready Player One, and sorry for anyone who's not seen it, but they come back to a place where there's a healthy balance, and they actually shut down Ready Player One or whatever they call the game for periods of time so that people can enjoy physical company. Now, is once again, this is that nuance point I was making. Is a virtual world, is a Web3 environment great for certain use cases in certain environments for certain people? 100%. Go for it. No problem. But it cannot be imagined to be something that we will spend majority of our time in. The day we start doing that, I think we're living in a society that has fundamentally broken its basic principles.
Okay. No, for sure. Coming, and I think what you're also trying to say is that for all these crypto dreams to actually take place, for Bitcoin to surge even further, we need to see an active metaverse like that where there will be active crypto trading. I think that's what you're getting towards also.
That's what it seems like now, because where is the real world application of crypto, of Bitcoin, right?
Which brings me to a conversation I had with a VC who invests in blockchain. She was talking about Africa. She was telling me how she keeps visiting Africa to invest in African startups, etc., near Ghana, Nigeria, that area. And I asked her, what's Africa like? So she effectively told me that it's almost entirely bought by China, firstly, like right. Almost all of Africa. And China has made it mandatory to use the digital yuan, which is their blockchain-based currency.
That's right.
Which some people say is supposedly going to replace the dollar as the stand. Like, what's the word?
Gold standard.
The gold standard. What gold used to be became the dollar.
Yeah.
And now they say possibly there might be a fall of USA, which American media will never speak about, but that's what the world is witnessing.
Yeah.
And the war happening between Russia and Ukraine. The inflation rate. Too many things are pointing towards, I won't say a complete fall of USA. It's not going to go down. It's probably going to be the second country. It's just not going to be the ultimate superpower in the world, not the big daddy of the world. Honestly, China with its economic strength is likely to become that big daddy in the world.
Okay.
And they are going forward with their own cryptocurrency called digital yuan. Yeah. Now, what I understand from it is every time you want to trade in digital yuan, you're supposed to give a lot of your details to even buy one digital yuan. I don't know how you say it. Yuan.
Yuan.
So my point is China is collecting a lot of data of anyone who's using digital yuan. So they already have data on all African business owners who they deal with. Plus, if someone's trading with African business owners.
Right.
And because data is the new oil, which is 110% true. As my career keeps going forward, I realize the power of data.
Yeah.
That when we talk about Gulf countries which made their fortunes in the last 50 years through oil, the next massive fortunes are going to be made by whoever
Absolutely.
holds data.
Yeah.
As we see with the big tech giants of the world in terms of
Correct.
Twitter, Facebook, etc. But imagine a country's government that holds all data. And honestly, the progress that China has seen is because they have so much data on its citizens, probably. I'm sure they're using that data to
Yeah.
mold their country better. Now imagine that they basically kind of take over the world economically, which they have done. They've taken over almost all the poor countries you can think of, the small poor countries. They're taking over all of Africa. Man, we're like talking about the next 50 years where China will be the emperor of the world.
Yeah, no, I think China will have a very large presence on the world. It's obviously to be seen whether they, really displace the US. I mean, I think there's never been a credible threat to US's position as it has been today. I think that's for sure. But I'm with you. And once again, blockchain is a very powerful technology. Once again, blockchain was supposed to protect people's identities and not the other way around, right? But again, it's the use case, right, of how it's being deployed, which is exactly opposite to the point of blockchain. But countries will use it. It will get abused. It will also serve great purposes, and that's true for any technology.
Are there finance and fintech lessons from China?
I would say that, I mean, I'm looking back at what I have been exposed to. Obviously, there are many things from China that I don't have exposure to, but I think there are at least a few things that I can think about. One is, and these are some of the in public domain. The first thing when I visited China for the first time, maybe 4 or 5 years back, everyone was using the mobile to pay, right? There was no question about it. It was integrated into WeChat. It's called WePay, and it was a payment solution that everyone used. People were not carrying wallets, right? They were just carrying mobile phones. And to believe that we are going to get to something similar is not difficult to believe, right? And hence, to me, one of the biggest opportunities that continues to exist in India is on the payment space. UPI has been obviously a great enabler of that. I can't remember. I'm most of the times I take out and pay via UPI instead of paying via credit card, even though it makes no sense, right? I have no reason why I should pay by UPI, but it's so damn convenient. I will pay on UPI versus credit card, and I think that's something that's still going to continue to explode in India. Second is what has recently happened with Alipay, which maybe people have looked at. Alipay ended up being controlled or being subject to a lot of sanctions from the Chinese government. Once again, I would like people to that there's only some information that is available. I don't know all the information, but it did seem that some of the loans that were given were not as kosher or as good as they should have been. We're seeing a lot of BNPL, buy now pay later, happen in India. We're seeing a lot of lending applications come out in India, and that's an industry that has been taken by storm. Okay, I'm not saying it's bad, but I think there's a lot of amount of care that needs to be taken in how some of this lending is being done. And the examples of China where some of that has gone wrong is important for us to take as we build out fintech, especially on the lending side.
Intense. Wow. Okay, that's a whole other podcast conversation, dude. It's just at this moment in time, I'm extremely fascinated by what's happening in the world. Thanks to the podcast, thanks to people like yourself who've been on the show. We're in the middle of exciting times, but
Incredibly.
I also feel that when there are exciting times, there are waves of money-making opportunity. And again, that brings me to everything you're doing. I just wish you luck with Grip Invest, dude. I think you guys are sitting on a fantastic product. And it's a matter of time before like the kind of educated retail investors understand that, hey, there's some more ways to become richer.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to do our best. I think I would say we're fortunate to have this opportunity to build. I believe businesses are built predominantly on timing. I think we're in an interesting environment where fixed deposit rates are really low, and investors are looking for alternatives. Stock markets are incredibly volatile, and the Indian investor has not had access to a lot of investment options, right? On the principles of diversification, there needs to be the option created. Whether you invest or not is your decision, right? And it's based on your risk appetite, where you are in your life, how much money you want to put, and what you want to invest behind. But at least creating access, giving people options, is something that we are trying to do as a platform. And then leave it to the decision making capability of an individual to say, okay, fine, this is something that I'd like to try. I think it's important for people to be able to try at a low ticket size, and start their journey somewhere, and then do what's right for them.
What's the lowest people can invest?
Currently it's about 10,000 rupees, right? So it's a place where you can start your journey by discovering something, make sure it's right for you, and if it works out, right, sure, do more of it. Allocate a certain amount of portfolio to it, but start small, right? But at least have the option. I think that's the most important part. What you can do with it is your choice, but I think what we've restricted to is not having the option. Imagine in our parents' generation, the only car you could buy was an Ambassador and a Fiat. Okay? It doesn't mean that today you have an option, you're going to buy a Mercedes S-Class or a fancy car, but at least you have the option to doing it. You have the ability to strive for what is available in the market. But what if the market only told you that you only have two things? Right? I think that's what we're trying to enable.
Hey, Nikhil Aggarwal, thank you, brother. This was insightful. This was another kind of portion of my own higher studies in life, which I gained through people like yourself.
No, I love the chat. It's like I told you, it's a Friday evening. And maybe this chat was too serious for a Friday evening.
You're in the middle of thinking, like, where's the ladies at? Why can't we have some? No, I'm kidding,
Yeah,
bro.
but
This was fun.
no, it was great chatting with you.
Yeah.
Thanks for those questions. I think I can't agree with you more that we're living in an incredibly interesting time. However you look at life, right, and whatever you're doing in life, and I think should be just fortunate and grab as many opportunities as we can. I'm trying to do the same. And I think interacting with people like you is definitely one of those experiences.
I would say the same about you, my brother. But as Ankur Wariku says, fuck the fixed deposits, but also think about how to get richer. And as he also taught me in life, that try deriving your own happiness from your sense of curiosity. So this podcast
That's a nice statement. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for my brand and the views and content, but at its core, for me on a personal level, it gives me happiness, man. When you are able to channelize your intellectual stimulation through a medium like this, it's fantastic.
I agree. Like I said, it's not always about money. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the right way to sign off.
No.
Yeah, it's not always about money. We do things for many other reasons. 100%. Most of the time for other reasons.
Mr. Agarwal,
Thank
for
you.
being
Thanks
on
so much.
TRS.
Thanks so much.
brother.
Hey guys, so that was the episode for today. Currently shooting this outro out of Dubai. Really opened up my heart in front of Nikhil bhai. Met him a lot prior to recording this podcast, but I wanted you guys to see his mind because he's someone who's always given me a lot of practical advice, be it in money or be it in life. That's what I gained more of through this conversation, and I hope you gained as well. Remember to follow us on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. From The Ranveer Show, from BeerBiceps, and the entire team. We'll see you soon.